All right. Hello. I'm a little stuffy again. I'm going to give my nasal spray some time to kick in. Um, but I wanted to dive into week 9. Can't believe we wrapped up week 9 going into week 10. This quarter, I feel like more than a lot of other quarters, just like really flew by. And obviously, I'm so excited about next week's lecture. I feel like we really saved the best for last with plants. And I have something really fun planned. I'm going to bring in a bunch of my plants and kind of tell you a little bit about each one of them. And I know you and I have kind of talked back and forth a little bit about how plants are people. And people think I'm like really crazy when I say that, but it's really the truth. And each and every one of them in my house actually have a name, and they definitely have a personality. Some of them are very particular, and it's just really interesting to see how their personalities kind of differ and how they kind of evolve in our house. It's really funny. So anyone who says that plants and animals aren't people, I don't think have plants or pets. So anyway, I wanted to dive into animals. This one I'm gonna make kind of not a short video, but just like a shorter video. There was obviously a lot to tackle. I think for me, a lot of my thoughts though are pretty like concise and pretty consistent throughout, between the reading, the lecture, and then also the bullfighting video, which is kind of what I wanted to spend a little bit more time on reaction to. Um, so I agree with you. I feel that some of the more obvious ways that we harm animals, excuse me, sorry. I'm having more sinus issues as always. So I get that from the Midwest. Lucky me. So, but I agree with you. I think the more obvious ways that we tend to harm animals or use them is through the testing, the eating, and the wearing. And I think the animal labor isn't maybe for me as much of an issue. I feel that for me, an exception to that was probably like the dogs that help lead people who are blind, and they do give them emotional support. There's no really harm to the animal. I wouldn't say we force them to do manual labor. So to me, I think that's a little bit of a different exception, but definitely with testing, eating, and wearing. Um, I'm actually really big on using makeup and things like that that are cruelty free, that are vegan if I can. I know Milk Makeup is a really big, they were kind of like on the forefront of the makeup game when it came to that. And they've removed all animal products, any testing on animal products. I believe they're out of Australia. I could be wrong. And then a lot of their stuff actually has CBD in it. So it has a benefit to your skin as well. But I feel that one of the biggest reasons that we justify, when we talk about animal rights, and I'm not really an animal rights activist. I'm actually paleo, so is my husband. So we eat a lot of meat. I wouldn't say we're carnivores by any means. We don't do like that weird carnivorous diet. I just think that's weird. It's also not healthy for you at all. But someone debunked that a long time ago. But so our diet is primarily fish. We don't eat any red meat though. That's just kind of like our preference. We just eat turkey and chicken and fish. That's pretty much it. Honestly, it's the only protein. And then, we eat fruits, vegetables. We don't eat dairy, anything like that. Oat milk is like my go-to out here, obviously. So, we do a lot of things to try to eliminate our harm and our waste in our personal household as much as we possibly can. And obviously, I've shared with you like my religious background a little bit, and we just feel that, like as Christians, that God put certain things in our lives that we should be good stewards over. And I believe that the earth is one of those things as well. And to me, it's actually really sad that I don't think most people, but especially Christians, don't really have good stewardship. They kind of cherry pick the Bible a little bit and decide Unfortunately, my parents are kind of that way. My parents don't recycle. They don't use things. They don't try to like reuse plastic bottles. We don't even buy plastic bottles. But anyway, I'm getting off of my tangent. So I think a lot of the reasons that we tend to justify why animals and other non-human beings on the planet shouldn't receive uh, that fair treatment and some of those rights is because we do feel that they don't really relate to us as far as like time and pain and hurting. They don't really have a conscience in that way. And obviously, through a lot of my own interactions with my own pets and with obviously my whole house is full of plants. I just really disagree with that. And I think that plants and animals do have an IQ. It's just maybe measured in a different way. We wouldn't maybe really call it an IQ, but there's definitely a consciousness. Any conscious human being or living being, period, to be able to move is making a conscious choice. So I feel like if you can move, create movement, plants move too. There's like those dancing plant videos that I love so much. And when it gets dark and light, the plants adjust to that and they kind of sleep and take a break and then they pop up again in the sunlight. And so to me, I feel that argument of consciousness and the ontological argument of like being able to make rational decisions and things like that is just kind of like a bubble of an argument. And I just thought it was really interesting that ontologically we kind of deprive other living beings and non-living beings on the planet based off of, humans are morally better. Really what I feel that translated to is that I think human lives are valued more because they can financially contribute more. And if we're talking about politics and things like that, I know it kind of is like a dark argument, but I think that people value lives. Not this isn't even just like a plant, animal, and human argument. This is just on like a human being argument. Our society values the things that can contribute and grow and condone the society and the structure. So when you look at other oppressed groups, it's not that as a human being, maybe we don't value them, but politically and economically, we don't value people who can't really contribute to society. So I actually think that that's another argument that we didn't really touch on. It was just kind of something that I thought of on my own kind of, and it's a little dark, but honestly, I just kind of think it's the truth. And I think even like I said, on a human to human basis, I think we tend to value the things that can financially contribute and that the government and the system can kind of make money off of in that way. And, you can't really animals can't make you money. You can make money off of animals like SeaWorld and stuff like that in the zoo, but animals can't go out and labor for you and make you money and contribute to society and wealth and in the capitalist system. So just not to be super dark, but that was kind of like one of my main arguments as to why we try to justify in our minds why animals don't receive or shouldn't receive the same rights and benefits and fair treatment as a human being should. So obviously I broke down my list. I was kind of doing it along with you. I'm totally on board with the whole honeybees thing. We actually don't even have honey in our house. That's something that we're kind of against as well, just an active choice that we make to try to do our part. And I think you brought up a really good point when it came to some of the cruelty and the devastation that human beings bring. I think a lot of it really is unconscious and you're not meaning to, and sometimes it's honestly just really avoidable. I have to drive a car so to get to my job, so to me I would, if I have to do that, I should, ethically and morally speaking, if I have the opportunity to drive a car that's easier on the environment, I feel that I should. So when it came to humans harming more than contributing, I definitely through the chart kind of saw that trend for sure. And I also really like that you talked about never letting your ideology do the thinking for you, to never stop critically thinking. And I think, like I said, a good example of that is like my husband and I are paleo, but we're not like strict paleo. There are some things, obviously, like honey. We could technically eat honey on the paleo diet, but we just choose not to, not because like, oh, but it's paleo, so we can do it. But I try to think about how every action that I have, especially when I'm honestly at the point where I don't even know if I'm going to eat anything but fish anymore, because it's just kind of weird to me. And my husband and I talk all the time about like, it's weird that I'm starting to think every time I eat, like I made turkey chili yesterday, and 'cause obviously I don't eat red meat. So we were making our turkey chili, and I was thinking like an animal had to die for me to have chili. And it's kind of weird because I think about like the life that it lived and like the farm that it came from, and like I don't know, like I try to get sustainably sourced stuff, but it's like it kind of defeats the purpose. If the animal has to die for you to enjoy it anyway, then why does it matter if you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's just kind of like a weird backwards argument to me. So um, I wrote down here at the bottom, this was kind of my takeaway from like that first initial video. You only deserve rights if you do something to help others. And again, I felt for me that a lot of that, like economically, we've talked about in the class, if you're not able to contribute to society in a financial way, unfortunately, I think that you're not really valued as much as some other beings or non-beings or people are. So the thing that I kind of wanted to talk the most about was the bullfighting and kind of what my thoughts were. And I think that, bullfighting is something, when I first started watching it, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of like, I don't know if I can watch this. Just being totally honest, I was like, oh, I don't want to watch a bull get stabbed to death. And like, I didn't even really know what bullfighting was. I thought it was a lot like a rodeo. I know it sounds like really stupid, but like, that's kind of like what I thought it was. I didn't know that the bull actually died at the end. 'Cause I don't really have access to watch a lot of bullfighting. It's not obviously something that's part of our mainstream sports and customs here in the US. So, um, I really loved though that this kind of like tied into the reading a little bit for me. When we talked about dedicating the bowls to a specific person or a community as a blessing. And for me, obviously, that really tied back to a lot of like religious sacrifice and things like that. But I thought that there was a lot of, I don't know if it would be like irony or like an oxymoron. I guess I don't know what the correct term for that would be. But to me, there was a lot of like significant irony and a lot of great symbolism when it came to that, because you would think that when you're bullfighting and a bull has to die, it's like, but why are we killing something for sport and televising it? But it's really interesting that it's so important to them how they go about, and it's not like you said, I just feel like I have so much to unpack. um like you said, it's not really about killing the animal for sport and like just going for it. It's about more of a sacrificial, like in their culture, that is seen as a god, like a godlike figure in a sense, and it's something that's very highly regarded and respected. And so when there's a respectful and honorable way to kill an animal with dignity, like the whole thing was just very it felt like poetic to me in a lot of ways, and it does kind of like tell a symbolic story. And I definitely see why you're into it. It's obviously kind of something that kind of makes your brain itch a little bit, and not many things that we watch as far as like a sport or performance perspective goes here in our country, at least, doesn't really involve a lot of critical thinking. And so I thought like the socks and the symbolism with that was just insane. I really loved that at the end they kind of wave that
that white handkerchief to symbolize the kill, that it was peaceful and respectful. Um, I also really liked that you had mentioned something about how the death has a purpose, and tying this into religion, and again, a little bit to the reading as well. When it comes to God and God being in control. And a lot of those sacrifices in the Bible was to acknowledge your faith and your trust in God, right? And even to the point where in the Bible they would be asked to kill someone else, and then God would intervene and say, well done, you trusted me, I'm not going to make you do that, but I do want a lamb, or something like that. But and an interesting correlation to me with that when it came to bullfighting was that the death had a purpose, and that it was significant in a sense of it represented um, like a peaceful, I don't really have the words for it. Sorry, it's just kind of like such a big abstract concept for me, but just knowing that like the animal died with dignity, and that you're giving it the respect that it deserves, to me was just a really, really symbolic thing. And um, I really like that you talked about how the bull represented a Christ-like figure and how it represented fertility and escaping death. I also thought it was really cool you were talking about the matador, and how they almost are faced like head on with that like immediate sense of danger and that death. But they're facing life with dignity and honor. I wrote that down. And that, when life is dangerous, and a lot of times life is, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and you're kind of dodging a lot of things. That was kind of like the symbolic, meaning for me of kind of like the swaying of the cape and things like that. Um, I also really liked that you had mentioned about how it represents culture, rituals, and customs, and the act of that bullfighting is trying to make sense of life, and it's just like onions peeling like the layers and layers and layers of an onion. So overall, I would say that I think the process of bullfighting and it being like intentionally difficult, long, um and there's like a whole process to it, and there's like you said, a lot of it's like really lavish and over the top to kind of symbolize bringing that respect to the table. With the extensive costumes, you said they're really expensive, it's intensive process, and it's hard to kill the bull. So to me, I just thought tying it back to animal rights and things like that, I guess some would say it's still, and I guess maybe I would even say this, it still seems, without knowing much about it, it seems kind of like an oxymoron. It's like, but we're killing it with dignity. Yeah, but it's still dying. Um, but I don't know. Like, I definitely see it both ways. And again, I think that critical thinking, not just saying like, oh, and I think that was probably the point of why we watched the bullfighting video as well, because you had talked a lot about still critically thinking through your ideology and through your customs and beliefs, and how important that is morally to always be um, philosophically challenging yourself and evolving. And so tying that back to animal rights, I think that there's a lot of things about bullfighting that really take into account the animal and respect. And I think that that's maybe the approach that I take in life. I'm not I'm not a vegan, obviously, but I do believe that if I am choosing to eat meat or to eat animals or animal products, that there's a responsible and respectful way to do it, almost like in bullfighting with dignity. And again, like, just because honey is paleo, well, actually I don't think honey is paleo, agave is paleo, but regardless, you can eat animal products on the paleo diet. And just because one ideology says that, and that's what I claim to abide by or live by, whatever you would say, doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do that. And so I think for me, to kind of wrap up the animal rights, I think there's definitely a lot of like respect, and it's really unfortunate that we deprive non-living things and even living things that just aren't human a lot of rights, as far as believing that they deserve certain things, even if it's just fair treatment. And to me, the littlest things like fair trade coffee, making sure that things are sustainably sourced, recycling, just little things like that, I think if you were to take animal rights and bullfighting and kind of combine them, I feel like that's kind of where I fall on the spectrum. And next week, I'm really excited because I'm definitely going to be talking a lot about the plants. But I think that's all I got for this week. I figured it was going to be kind of short, but I really liked the bullfighting and I thought it was really interesting. I think it's an interesting way to kind of correlate that with human rights, or with animal rights, sorry. Well, and human rights too. But um, yeah, I just think it was really interesting. And I'm really curious to see like how we tie in plants to continue this discussion of rights. And I know we talked about children, we talked about animals, and um, it's interesting to look at all these different groups that have been oppressed and kind of like what the common themes are with them. And a lot of times where oppression stems from. And in my opinion, I think a lot of it really ties back to money and to rationality. And even though people may think that animals don't have a conscience or they're not rational, I would argue even to move your head or to move away from something requires some sort of consciousness or rationality or decision making process in general, much like the honeybee. So that's all I got for this week, and I'll see you next week with all my plants.